Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Ross, for being here, for being willing to serve, and I look forward to your leadership at Commerce and what I think, from everything I read, would be an expanded role beyond Commerce because of the President-elect's confidence in you. On the infrastructure side, we had Secretary Chow, former Secretary of Labor, and I suspect the future Secretary of Transportation, in the other day. And one of the questions I asked her was about the importance of a better intermodal strategy for transportation. You know, where I live in Missouri, the Mississippi River is there, the Missouri River flows into the Mississippi, but across we are really at the water nexus of the country, but also the rail and highway nexus of the country. I'm sure all of those need to work together even better for us to have the competitive potential we need. And I'd like you to talk just a little bit about your sense of how we look at those, a more interrelated transportation system.
Well, as you know, we have been in the rail car manufacturing business for quite a long time, and one of our major products were the types of cars that are best suited to intermodal, because there's a role for truck, there's a role for barges, there's a role for rail. And I think people keep trying and will eventually succeed at finding new and better ways to facilitate those transfers from one mode of transportation to another. I think that's a very, very vital thing for this country, because for many industries, transportation cost is as much as 20% of their total cost. So anything that can be done to facilitate transportation will help the economy just in and of itself, let alone infrastructure spending has a very high labor content, generally around 44%. So it's a very good way to provide high-paying jobs to ordinary people.
And in the, if I understood your sort of your three-level matrix of how you finance, one was things that have an obvious and easy to understand financing component that have access to the credit world because of that. Another may have some component like a rural cable that could pay part of the bill but not all the bill. But then in the middle you had that greater category of things that just can't happen without a partnership. Would you give me an idea both of what one of those might be and what the private sector opportunity that we're not seeing or not using effectively could be as we look down the road?
Yes, sir. I think we're fortunate to be coming to grips with infrastructure in a relatively low interest rate environment, because that will facilitate getting a lot of projects done that could not be done in a lower interest rate environment, because there would be a crowding out effect. But even so, there will be, in many cases, a need either for the public policy decision to have government play a direct role, or for a way to encourage private sector to participate. So I think it won't be one size fits all. It's a very large and very complex problem, and it needs very large, very inventive and complex solutions.
And you're also proposing that as you look at infrastructure that we're making a greater effort to incorporate new technologies into that infrastructure?
Yes, sir. And that's a lot of what we're doing in Florida right now. It's not just to get away from the hurricanes. We're also building in extra conduit beyond even the optical fiber that we're putting in the first instance to allow for potential developments in the future, because it's a lot easier to lay the second or third conduit at the same time than it would be to have to close that up and then come back 5 years from now. So we've been trying to get a little bit ahead of the game. And in that particular case, it's being financed by tax-exempt bonds.
So Senator Klobuchar and I have been particularly involved in the travel and tourism issues, thinking that often described as the low-hanging fruit in the economy, particularly foreign travel to our country. Current secretary has been very interested in that. It's part of the portfolio of commerce. Would you talk just a little bit about that and how it impacts the economy?
Surely. First of all, having been involved, I worked with the labor unions in the Pan American World Airways bankruptcy. I was their financial advisor, was bondholder advisor in TWA, preferred stock advisor in Eastern. So I'm pretty familiar with the airline industry, and actually had been on the board of Wien Airlines up in Alaska for quite a while. I'm a big proponent of the open skies policy. I think that's an important thing. I think developing tourism is extremely important, and I think something like a ninth of all the jobs in this country are one way or another dependent on tourism. So it is a powerful economic factor, and it is one of these segments of Commerce Department that I will certainly be paying attention to if confirmed.
And I just say in closing, Mr. Chairman, and to Mr. Ross, it's also an area where we've got a very active public-private effort going on right now to encourage people to discover America. So, thank you, Chairman.